Hello YouTube. You may have noticed that I finally got a microphone, so what you're getting is my first video with a new format that's me speaking over the video. So hopefully this gets a few extra useful tips mixed in and cuts down on having to read all the subtitles. Enjoy! For this model I just built it out of the box with no extra scratch built parts or photo etch. This is just a $25 Tamiya kit. So there's seam lines all over the landing gear, so I'm scraping them off with my hobby nut. After I fill the wing root gaps with putty, I then clean and smooth them off with a damp cotton swab. It's just damp with water. I temporarily glue the landing gear doors in place for painting. I just use a small bit of extra thin cement so that I can pry them off later without damaging the plastic. I glue the small pieces like the antenna and the gear pistons to a toothpick with extra thin super glue for the painting. Before I spray my Alclad coat, I use a base coat of semi-gloss black with some extra X22 gloss clear mixed in, and then I polish it off to get a real smooth, shiny coat. After I unmasked my panels, I decided the steel color was too dark, so I ended up coming back and coating over it with Alclad polished aluminum color. One modification I did do was drilling out the exhaust pipes. So I drilled out a small pilot hole, and then I enlarged that hole with the tip of my hobby knife. The windshield had a scratch on one panel, and so I ended up sanding it. Unfortunately, I forgot to hit record and film the actual scratch, but I used gradually higher grits of sandpaper and sanded each grit in a single direction, but in a different direction to the previous grit before it. So I used 1000 to 4000 grit paper, and then I finished it off with some fine and some finish level polishes from Tamiya. Here I simply make a mixture of pigment and pigment fixer that I'll then brush onto the tires. I decided that the dirt was too heavy, and so before it's completely dry, I'm able to take a dry brush and brush some of the heavy spots away. I decided to lightly weather the model, so I sprayed some chipping fluid over my Alclad coat, and so I'm brushing it off with water and chipping the fine specks with a toothpick. So this is a piece of foam from an old resin set that I bought. I think like Brazen, they always come with some extra foam, and so I get a tiny bit of aluminum paint on the tip, and I'm able to use that to weather the propeller blades and get a real good chipped effect. At this point, I've coated all the parts with Revive It, which is the new American name for Future, and now I began weathering it with oils. I dry brush the oils to smooth them out, and then I'll repeat the process and add more paint and continue blending. Add more paint, smooth it out. Add more paint, smooth it out, until I'm happy with how it looks. kit didn't provide red circle decals for the fuel caps, so I had to improvise with some of the leftover decals from one of the alternate markings that I didn't use. I sliced all the major large decals along the panel lines, and then I added a second coat of microsol to really seal them and give them that painted on look. Since the cockpit was pretty boring, I decided to add the pilot on this build and also keep the cockpit closed. So my figure painting is a bit rough, but as I improve, maybe I'll film it for a future video. I did this one with Abteilung, if that's how you pronounce it, oil paints, and then coated it with some Mr. Hobby flat clear. For these machine gun powder stains, I use the same technique as with the drop tanks. I use one brush to add some spots and lines of oil paint. And then I got a second brush that's just completely dry, and I use it for dry brushing and smoothing it out. And I'll go back and forth with each brush, repeating the process and smoothing until I'm happy with how it looks. So the cotton swab is dry. I actually didn't use any mineral spirits on it, and so I'm just rubbing it and helping remove the excess paint and shape the stains. The antenna cable needed a hole in the windshield to pass through, so the tape is just there to help me line up with the center. I manually drilled a hole. It looks extra large because I chipped the clear coat. I had previously dipped the windshield in Future / Revive It. And when I broke through the plastic, it chipped that coat. I was able to fix this just by re-dipping the piece though. I glued the canopy in place with the rigging thread hanging out the side, and I just came back later and cut off the excess. In the end, when you look at it, the thread just looks like it's coming through the windshield and just hanging down into the cockpit. You can't tell that it's brought off to the side.